The night was meant to be like every other Hollywood evening. The crowd had gathered, the lights burned hot above the stage, and the cameras were waiting to capture every single smile, every forced laugh, and every polished word. But the moment he stepped onto the stage, something already felt different. It was Keanu Reeves, walking slowly, his hands folded softly in front of him, his eyes steady but humble, as though he carried a secret he would never let the cameras take away. The audience began clapping, louder and louder, until it felt like the room itself was shaking. But Keanu did not raise his hand to wave. He did not nod. He did not let the applause feed him. Instead, he lowered his head, almost gently, almost painfully, and refused it. That silence cut through the noise in a way no speech ever could. People in the first rows stopped clapping, confused, waiting for some signal. And then, almost at the edge of the stage, someone noticed. Ana de Armas, who had been seated quietly at the far end, caught his eyes. She saw not a movie star, not a man trying to look bigger than life, but someone who was choosing something rare. Humility in a place where ego was currency. She felt it, in her chest, like the first breath of air after being underwater too long. In that refusal, she felt seen, not just as an actress who shared screens with him, but as a person who also feared being lost inside the loud circus of Hollywood. As the silence stretched, it was no longer awkward. It became powerful. The applause softened, turned into a quiet waiting. Keanu lifted his eyes and finally spoke, his voice calm and soft. He said, "The applause belongs to the crew, to the people you do not see, to the hands that built the world behind us. Without them, we are shadows." His words carried no heavy accent of drama, no sharp edge to win hearts. They were plain, but in their plainness, they broke something open. Ana felt her throat tighten. She had grown up dreaming of nights like these, but when the applause came, it never felt like hers. It felt empty, borrowed, like glass that would crack if she touched it too hard. And now, as she listened to Keanu, she thought about her own path, about the moments she had wanted to disappear backstage rather than smile for flashes. She realized he was giving her permission to feel that way, to not be ashamed of it. But the night was not free from conflict. Not everyone in the room liked silence. There were whispers, quiet frowns, small coughs of disapproval. The host shifted uncomfortably. Some people thought it was disrespect. Some thought it was arrogance dressed as modesty. That tension grew sharp, like a knife balancing on a table edge. It could fall either way, towards anger or towards understanding. Ana could not stop herself. She stood, not loudly, not to make herself the center. She only rose with slow movements, as though carried by something greater. Her hands began to clap again, but this time it was softer, not wild, not the applause of a fan or an audience, but the clap of someone who understood. Others followed. The sound was different now. It was not a storm. It was steady, human, respectful. Keanu looked toward her, and though his face remained calm, his eyes softened, as though he knew she had caught the truth of what he meant. In that moment, the hall was divided. Half clapped because they always did, because applause was safe. The other half clapped because they finally understood something they had never seen before. Humility was not weakness. Humility was strength. Keanu stepped back, giving his space to the crew members he mentioned. And for the first time, Ana realized that kindness was not always loud, not always sweet words or grand gestures. Sometimes, kindness was the courage to refuse what everyone else wanted you to accept. She sat back down, her heart racing. She knew something had just begun. Not a scene from a movie, not a role written on a script. Something real, something human, something that would stay with her. She thought quietly to herself, He refused the applause. But in that refusal, he gave me a voice I did not know I had. And the night, which had begun with noise, ended for her with silence that felt like truth. The show moved on, as all shows do, with flashing lights, polite laughter, and practiced smiles. But for Anna, the moment refused to leave. Even as other actors spoke, even as the cameras swung across the crowd, she felt the echo of that silence. It was still in her chest, still in the way her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the edge of her dress. She told herself to focus, to breathe, but every time her eyes drifted back to Keanu, she remembered how he had stood there, refusing what everyone else was desperate to take. When the lights finally dimmed for a break, Anna slipped away from her seat. Her heart beat too quickly, not because she planned anything, but because she needed space. The hallways backstage were narrow, filled with crew rushing from one task to another, wires across the floor, voices calling out instructions. Here, applause was gone. Here, the real work hummed, hidden from the crowd. Anna walked slowly, watching the people carrying trays, adjusting lights, holding clipboards. She thought of Keanu's words, "The applause belongs to the crew," and realized how true it was. She stopped when she saw him. He was leaning against a wall near the side of the stage, almost invisible in the shadows. No cameras pointed here. No spotlight found him. He was just standing, his face calm, his hands folded loosely, watching the crew work. Anna hesitated. She had spoken to him before, on sets, in interviews, but never like this. Never without a script. Never without someone else guiding the moment. Something told her that if she walked away now, she would regret it. So she stepped closer. "You meant it, didn't you?" she said softly, her voice almost lost in the noise of backstage. Keanu turned his head, and for a second, she feared he would brush it off, give her a polite answer and nothing more. But his eyes held hers, steady, kind. "Every word," he replied. "Applause fades. The work doesn't." His tone was simple, but it carried weight. Anna felt it press into her like a truth she had always known but never dared to say out loud. "Most people, they want it," she said. "They live for it. Even me. Sometimes I think I need it just to feel real." Keanu shook his head gently. "You don't need it. You only think you do because everyone tells you it matters. But you already exist without it. That's enough." His words cut deep. She had spent years chasing recognition, worrying about reviews, fearing silence. And now, here was a man who stood in the middle of Hollywood and said the silence was enough. Before she could answer, the stage manager appeared, waving frantically. "We need you in 5, the man called, rushing past them. Keanu nodded, then looked back at her. "People will not understand," he said quietly. "Some will say it is arrogance. Some will say it is weakness. But what they call weakness is often strength. You must decide what matters more, their approval or your own peace." Anna's throat tightened. She wanted to ask him how he found that peace, how he carried himself with such calm, but the words stuck. She only managed a whisper. "It feels impossible." Keanu gave the smallest smile, one that barely touched his lips but warmed his eyes. "Everything worth doing feels impossible at first." Before she could speak again, he was gone, moving toward the stage, his footsteps quiet, his presence fading back into the rhythm of the show. Anna stayed behind, her mind racing. She thought of the faces in the crowd, the endless applause, the flashing cameras. She thought of how empty it felt, how much she feared losing herself inside it. And now she thought of his refusal, his calm, his strength. But as the night went on, not everyone backstage admired what he had done. Whispers spread quickly. One actor muttered, "He thinks he's better than us." Another crew member shook his head, saying, "Hollywood doesn't like silence, it likes a show." The tension was building, invisible but sharp, as if his choice had drawn a line through the room. Anna felt that line too, and without realizing it, she was already standing on his side of it. As she walked back toward her seat, she made a quiet promise to herself. She did not know where it would lead, but she knew she could not unhear his words. She could not unsee the silence that had meant more than the applause. The night was far from over, and so was her journey with the truth he had shown her. The next morning, the headlines arrived faster than the sunrise. Every magazine, every entertainment blog, every social media post carried the same moment from the night before. The video of Keanu standing still while the applause thundered had been replayed, slowed down, analyzed from every angle. But what had felt like truth to Anna in that moment was already being twisted. Some articles called him cold and aloof. Others said he was too proud to accept the love of the audience. The harshest ones claimed he was making a mockery of the industry itself. The word arrogance appeared more than once, sharp and cruel. Anna sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through the stories on her phone, her stomach tightening with every line. She knew what she had seen. She knew the silence had not been pride, but humility. Yet it seemed the world was eager to turn it into scandal. Her phone buzzed with messages. Friends in the industry sent texts filled with warnings. "Be careful, Anna," one said. "Don't get caught up in this mess." Another wrote, "Stay out of it. Hollywood never forgives those who stand on the wrong side." But she also saw messages from fans, ordinary people who felt something different. One wrote, "I've never seen a star walk away from applause before. It made me cry." Another said, "For once, someone cared more about the crew than the cameras." Their words lit something small but steady inside her. Maybe not everyone had been blinded by the noise. Later that day, she went to the studio for a scheduled rehearsal. As she entered the building, she felt eyes on her. People whispered in corners, their voices too low to catch but sharp enough to wound. She walked past two fellow actors who stopped talking the moment she stepped near. The silence they left behind was heavy with judgment. Inside the rehearsal hall, Keanu was already there. He sat quietly on a chair near the back, reading from a script, as if the storm outside the walls did not exist. His calmness unsettled her. She wanted to ask him if he had read the articles, if he had seen the comments. She wanted to know if the words cut him the way they were cutting her. "You've seen it, haven't you?" she asked, her voice low. He looked up from the script, his expression unchanged. "I've seen enough." "And it doesn't bother you?" He paused, then shook his head gently. "What people say about you is their reflection, not yours. They cannot see what they are not ready to understand." Anna frowned. "But doesn't it hurt? To have your kindness turned into arrogance?" His eyes softened, and for the first time she saw a shadow of weariness in them. "Of course it hurts. I am human. But if I let their noise define me, then I give away the only thing I have, my peace." His words sank into her, heavy and real. She wanted to believe them, but the fear inside her whispered louder. She was not sure she could withstand the storm the way he did. During the rehearsal, she noticed how people treated him. Some avoided eye contact, others kept their distance. One actor even made a small joke under his breath, loud enough for others to hear. "Careful, don't clap too hard, he might walk out." Laughter followed, sharp and cutting. Anna's chest tightened. She waited for Keanu to react, but he did not. He stayed steady, reading his lines, treating the rehearsal with the same quiet respect as always. His silence was not weakness, it was control. After rehearsal, she caught up with him in the hallway. "Why don't you say something back? Why don't you defend yourself?" Keanu stopped walking and looked at her. "Because the moment you defend yourself to noise, you've already lost. They want a reaction. Silence is stronger than any reply. His calm voice shook her. She wanted to admire him, but she also feared for him. The storm was growing, and she could feel its weight pressing against both of them. That night she sat alone in her apartment, staring at the city lights outside her window. The world below was loud, always demanding, always hungry. She thought about her career, about the fragile path she had walked to reach this point. One wrong step, one wrong word, and everything could vanish. Yet she also thought about his silence, about the truth she had felt in it, about how it had given her courage she did not know she had. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from a friend. "Stay quiet. Don't take sides. This isn't your fight." Anna stared at the words, then placed the phone face down on the table. She knew her friend was wrong. It was her fight, because it was no longer just about applause. It was about respect. It was about humility. It was about the kind of person she wanted to be. The weight of whispers was heavy, but in her heart she felt the first sparks of defiance. The storm only grew louder. In the days that followed, the moment of Keanu's silence became the most discussed subject in Hollywood. Clips were replayed on television, headlines screamed about the actor who refused applause, and talk shows invited guests to debate whether it was humility or arrogance. Some praised him, many mocked him, but almost all spoke about him. Anna watched it unfold with a tightening chest. She wanted to believe the world would understand, that they would see what she had seen, but most only saw the story they wanted to see. When she arrived at a press event later that week, the air felt sharp. Cameras flashed, voices called her name, and questions flew toward her like stones. "Anna, what do you think about Keanu's refusal to accept applause? Do you agree with him, or do you think it was disrespectful? Was it staged for attention?" She kept walking, her lips pressed tight, her heart racing. Her team had already told her to stay quiet, to let the noise burn itself out. "Don't get involved," her manager warned. "You'll risk your reputation. People will label you too." But silence felt wrong. Every time she bit her tongue, she felt like she was betraying the truth she had witnessed that night. Later that evening, she found herself sitting on her balcony, the city lights sprawling beneath her. She thought about the girl she used to be, dreaming of Hollywood from far away, believing applause would fill the emptiness inside her. She thought about how empty it had felt once she finally heard it. And then she thought about Keanu, standing still, refusing it, and yet looking more at peace than anyone she had ever met. The memory brought tears to her eyes. She knew she could not stay quiet forever. The breaking point came sooner than she expected. At a roundtable interview the next day, a fellow actor laughed loudly and said, "Hollywood doesn't need saints, it needs stars. Refusing applause? Please. That's just arrogance dressed up as virtue." Others chuckled, nodding, some pretending to agree just to stay safe. The host smiled, ready to move on. But Anna felt something shift inside her. Her hands trembled, her heart pounded, but she spoke. "You're wrong," she said softly. But the room went silent. All eyes turned to her. She swallowed, her throat dry, but she kept going. "I was there. It wasn't arrogance. It was respect. He gave that moment to the people who never get seen, the people who hold this entire industry together. That wasn't weakness. That was strength." The host blinked, surprised. One actor raised an eyebrow, ready to challenge her. "Strength?" he scoffed. "Turning away from fans is strength?" Anna's voice steadied. "Strength is refusing what everyone expects you to take, even when it costs you. Strength is putting others above yourself, even when the world calls you a fool. I saw it. I felt it. And I will not pretend it was anything less." The room stayed quiet for a moment. The cameras caught every word, every flicker of emotion on her face. She knew the video would spread within hours. After the interview, her manager pulled her aside, whispering sharply, "Why did you say that? Do you realize what you've done? You just tied yourself to him. If he falls, you fall with him." Anna met her manager's eyes. Her voice was calm. "Then I fall. But at least I fall on the side of truth." That night, as she sat alone, her phone buzzed with messages again. Some were harsh, critics calling her naive, fans accusing her of chasing attention. But others were different. Strangers sent words of gratitude. One wrote, "Thank you for standing up for him. I thought I was the only one who saw what he meant." Another said, "You just reminded me that kindness still exists in this world." Her chest ached, caught between fear and relief. She knew the backlash would come harder tomorrow, but she also knew she had crossed a line she could never go back from. Later, her phone lit up with a single message from an unknown number. The words were simple. "Thank you for seeing what others chose not to see." She didn't need a name. She knew who it was. Anna closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "Then so be it." For the first time in years, she felt not like a performer, not like a product, but like a person who had chosen her own voice. The next day came like a wave. The interview clip spread across every screen, every platform, every conversation in Hollywood. Anna's words, simple and steady, were replayed again and again. "Then I fall. But at least I fall on the side of truth." Some praised her courage, but many sharpened their knives. One gossip column sneered, "Ana de Armas risks her career for Keanu Reeves. Misguided loyalty or desperate attempt at attention." Another article said, "The young actress takes sides in a battle no one asked for. Career suicide or bravery?" Her phone buzzed without pause. Her manager's voice cracked with frustration during a call. "Do you understand what you've done? Studios don't like trouble. They don't like actors who divide audiences. You've made yourself a liability." Anna listened quietly, her hands shaking, but when she hung up, she felt strangely calm. She had expected the backlash. What she hadn't expected were the voices of ordinary people rising louder than before. Messages poured in, not from Hollywood, but from across the world. Fans, students, mothers, fathers, young dreamers. One message read, "Thank you for standing up for humility. My son wants to be an actor, and I hope he grows up to be like the man you defended." Another said, "You reminded me that fame isn't everything. Humanity is." These messages gave her strength, but they also made her realize the storm had pulled her into the center with Keanu. She was no longer a quiet witness. She was part of the fire. At a film event a few days later, the tension was unbearable. As she walked the red carpet, flashes blinded her, and questions shot out like arrows. "Anna, are you defending Keanu because you agree with him or because you want attention? Do you regret what you said? Are you ready to lose work for this?" Her throat burned with fear, but she answered softly, "I don't regret standing for respect." The reporters leaned closer, pushing for more, but before the storm swallowed her, another figure stepped into the frame. Keanu. He placed himself beside her, his calm presence like a wall against the chaos. For a moment, the cameras went wild, flashes exploding, voices climbing louder. But he did not speak. He only stood there, steady, refusing to let her face the storm alone. Afterward, when they found a quiet corner away from the noise, Anna turned to him. "Why did you do that? You didn't have to step in." Keanu looked at her, his expression gentle. "Because you stood for me when you didn't have to. No one should face noise alone." Her chest tightened, the weight of his words pressing against her heart. She realized then that this was not about Hollywood anymore. It was about something larger, something human. but the cost was real. Days later, her agent called again with news that a role she had been close to signing was suddenly no longer available. No reason was given, but she understood. Her defense had already begun to close doors. When she told Keanu, he sighed quietly, guilt flickering across his face. "You shouldn't have to lose because of me." Anna shook her head firmly. "I didn't lose. I chose. There's a difference." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then he said softly, "You're braver than you know." She smiled faintly, though her eyes burned. "Maybe I learned it from watching you." That night, as she sat alone again, scrolling through the endless noise online, she realized something had changed. Hollywood might try to push her out, but outside those walls, people had begun to see her differently. Not just as an actress, not just as a name in the credits, but as a person who chose truth over applause. And deep inside, she knew the fight was only beginning. The storm reached its peak. Every news outlet, every blog, every gossip show ran endless stories about Keanu and Anna. Hollywood insiders whispered that her career was finished, and studio executives quietly crossed her name from projects. Agents warned clients not to stand too close. The industry loved applause, not silence. And yet she had chosen silence. Anna felt the weight pressing harder each day. Her phone calls grew colder, her calendar emptier. Even friends avoided her, unsure of what standing beside her might cost them. At night, she sat by the window, staring at the city that had once felt like a dream and now felt like a cage. But still, she did not regret it. Keanu stayed quiet through it all, appearing at events with the same calm, speaking only when necessary, never feeding the noise. People called his silence arrogance, stubbornness, even cowardice. But those who looked closer saw something else. Peace. The turning point came unexpectedly. One evening, a late-night talk show invited several crew members, the very people Keanu had spoken about that night. Stagehands, camera operators, costume designers. Normally invisible, now seated under bright lights, they were asked how they felt about the controversy. One older man with tired hands and a soft voice spoke first. "I've worked in this industry for 30 years. I've seen actors take every bit of applause as if the world was theirs. But that night, Keanu reminded us that without us, there is no stage. He gave the moment to the people who never get it. To me, that was the greatest respect I've ever seen." The others nodded, their voices trembling as they shared stories of long nights, unseen work, and the rare kindnesses that kept them going. "When Anna defended him," one woman said, "she defended all of us too. She reminded us that respect matters more than fame." The clip went viral overnight. Suddenly, the narrative began to shift. The same audience that had once mocked now listened with new ears. Fans started sharing their own stories about unseen workers, the janitors, the nurses, the teachers, people whose applause never came. Hashtags spread, not about arrogance, but about humility. By the end of the week, a new headline appeared: "When Silence Honored the Unseen." Anna sat in her apartment, tears welling as she scrolled through the stories. She saw strangers thanking Keanu for reminding them of their own worth. She saw parents teaching their children about respect through his example. She saw her own words repeated by people she had never met. Her phone buzzed. It was her agent, her voice softer this time. "Anna, things are changing. People are starting to see what you saw." But Anna already knew. It was not about saving her career anymore. It was about saving her voice. A week later, she and Keanu attended another event together. The crowd clapped as they walked on stage. But this time, something was different. When the applause began, it was not wild, not loud for the sake of noise. It was steady, warm, almost reverent. It did not feel like worship. It felt like gratitude. Keanu paused, as always, his face calm. But then, for the first time, he looked toward the crew standing at the side of the stage and lifted his hand toward them. The crowd turned, clapping louder for the people who had always been hidden. Anna felt her throat tighten. She knew then that this was the true ending. Not applause for stars, but applause shared, given to those who had built the stage for them all. Later, as they stood together in the quiet hallway, she whispered, "You changed everything." Keanu shook his head gently. "We changed it. I refused the applause, but you gave it meaning when you chose to speak." She smiled, tears slipping down her face. "Then maybe silence was never empty. Maybe it was waiting for someone to listen." He looked at her, his eyes soft, steady, filled with the peace she had once thought impossible. "And you listened." In that moment, she realized something simple but powerful. Fame fades, applause fades, but truth does not. Kindness does not. Humility does not. And though the world had tried to twist their silence into weakness, it had become the loudest voice of all. The storm was over, but its echo would last forever.